A golf course is not the most fun place for kids, but as writer Rotsoil tells us, sometimes creating a new golf course can awaken the thing that rots the soil.
Hey kid, get out of here.
I looked up to see an older man scowling at me.
Move along, I said.
I turned my bike and started to pedal away. I'd ridden up to the empty lot across the street from the recycling center. The lot had been empty for as long as I could remember, but today there were a bunch of men standing around talking. They were all wearing dress shirts and slacks, and they looked important. They'd stuck little flags into the grass as far as I could see. It looked like they were planning something, and I already knew what it was. A couple weeks prior, I'd written a letter to City Hall suggesting they turn this vast empty space into something for the community. I'd suggested a playground, a dog park, a community garden, or even just preserved land so the deer that seemed to be invading the town could have somewhere safe to hang out. Unfortunately, a letter had come back a week later. They thanked me for my ideas, but they were going to sell the lot to a company that would be turning it into a golf course, which of course meant they'd be cutting down all the trees and dumping tons of chemicals into the grass to keep it green. It also meant kids would no longer be allowed to play here either, and it seemed to be a popular hangout in the summer. Kids would play here all day, and then when night came, we'd all lay in the grass and look up at the stars, pointing out constellations. A lot of families came here to watch the fireworks, too. I was frustrated, because I'd done what most of the old people in town were always telling us to. I tried to get involved in my community and wrote a letter to the local government. And they turned me down because a golf course can bring in more money and traffic than a park, or something stupid like that. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised anyway. I didn't really think they'd listen to a dumb kid like me. And here they were, already planning on how to destroy the land. Trees already had big red X's spray painted on them, indicating which ones would be chopped down. I came back the next day and the businessmen were gone. The little flags were still there though. Shortly after I arrived, a tree service showed up. I didn't stick around to watch them work. I rode back home and my younger neighbor, Tommy, was outside. He was throwing a ball in the air and jumping through a sprinkler. The kids at school made fun of me for hanging out with someone so much younger, but I didn't mind. I had fun with Tommy. "Hey Luke, where were you?" he asked as I dropped my bike on the lawn. He kicked his ball over to me, and I tossed it back. "Went to see the field. They're already chopping down the trees. Soon it'll be a dumb golf course for boring old people." "Does that mean we can't catch fireflies anymore?" I sighed. "I don't know. I guess we still can, until they start building for real." "Can we go tonight?" "Sure, as long as your mom says it's okay. We can take my bike." Tommy got so excited when I said yes. He forgot to catch his ball. It was why I liked hanging out with him. He was always happy and easily excited. When the sun was starting to set, we hopped on my bike and I took him over to the lot. A few other kids had the same idea. Tommy loved catching fireflies, so we'd made a special jar just for this. I'd borrowed one of my mom's canning jars and replaced the lid with a circle of cardboard with holes poked in it. At the end of the night, we always set the fireflies free. I sat on the grass watching Tommy run around with some of the other kids, trying to capture the blinking bugs. We'd been doing this for years, since Tommy moved in next door. It was hard to imagine we wouldn't be able to do this anymore. This was probably just the start, too. Soon, bigger companies would move in and take over the small hangouts we still had left. It wouldn't be long before the whole town was commercialized. Even in the dimming light, something about the lot didn't look right. And it wasn't because half the trees had been removed earlier in the day. The normally lush grass had brown, patchy spots. I couldn't remember a time when the grass here had been anything but green. Maybe with the lack of trees, the lot was getting too much sun. The next day was recycling day. The town encouraged families to bring things to the recycling center that they no longer needed. Clothes and household items that were in good condition would be donated to a charity. Families could also bring in electronics and chemicals, and the town could safely get rid of them. Since it was a town event, a long queue usually formed at the entrance. Rather than listen to their kids complain in the car, many parents opted to let their kids play in the lot across the street, where they could still keep an eye on them. Something else that would change when the golf course was built. To save time, Tommy's parents and mine usually went together. Today, it was just our dads.
You kids be careful,
my dad called as we slid out of his car. We just ignored him and ran across the street, stopping to look both ways, of course. When we reached the grass, we stopped short. We were the only kids that had come to play. There were several lawn service trucks lining the curb. "What's going on, mister?" Tommy asked one of them. The entire lot was now a wheat color. There was not a single blade of green grass to be seen. We had never seen grass so dry and crunchy before. He was scruffy looking and spoke with a gruff voice.
Not sure, really. Got a call about some brown patches. We came and sprayed some chemicals to help the grass grow healthy again. Just a couple hours, everything dried up anyways. Never seen nothing like it before. Gonna try some sod and seed.
A couple other servicemen were pulling shovels out of their trucks.
Wasn't planning on having to do this, so we're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. You boys wanna help?
We shook our heads and he let out a hearty laugh.
Yeah, can't say I blame you.
They started digging up the old, crunchy grass, leaving it in piles as they worked. There were a few servicemen here, but they had a long job ahead of them without the proper equipment. A few minutes later, another truck pulled up. This one had rolls of sod packed into the back of it.
Phew, something stinks. Is it you guys? Anyway, this is all we could get on such a short notice,
I heard one of them telling the other.
I guess we lay this out, seed what we can, and hope it sticks. We can come back later in the week with the proper equipment and finish the job.
He was right. There was a slight, odd smell in the air. But it didn't smell like gross, old, sweaty men. We sat on the curb, watching them work. Working together, they were able to get a lot done in a short amount of time, but it seemed insignificant compared to the sea of grass that stretched out ahead of them.
You kids want to test it out?
One of them asked. They were drenched in sweat, and with all of them huddled around the water cooler, they definitely smelled ripe. Still, there was a musty, earthy smell in the air. Tommy jumped up, eager to run around. They had managed to install a few yards of sod, so he had some space to run around.
I don't know, something ain't right about that soil. It don't look right,
the man who talked to us earlier was saying.
I've been here before, and I've seen what the grass used to look like. These roots look all rotted. There's bugs in that soil that don't look good. It all looks diseased.
They finished up their break and started spreading grass seed. Our parents pulled up next to me and got out of the car. "Hey boys, we're all done here. How about we go get some ice cream?" Tommy's dad called. Tommy, in his excitement to see his dad, or at the mention of ice cream, came running over. In his rush, he didn't see a corner of sod sticking up, and tripped. He managed to clear most of the remaining sod and face-planted in the dirt. I had to stifle a laugh, while Tommy's dad went over to pick him up. "You alright?" he asked, brushing Tommy off. Tommy nodded, but there was a big dirt stain on his t-shirt now. "Your mom's gonna kill us," he said with a wink, picking Tommy up. Later that night, when I was watching cartoons, I heard my parents talking quietly in the kitchen. "Are you feeling alright?" "And Lucas?" my mom asked. I guess my dad nodded. "Cindy just texted. She said Tommy isn't feeling well. He's really sick. She thought it might have been the ice cream. If he's not better tomorrow, she's taking him to the doctor." It rained the next day, so I couldn't go outside. I went next door to see if Tommy could come over and watch a movie, but his mom said he was too sick. Reluctantly, I returned home. "No Tommy?" my mom asked. "No, his mom said he's too sick." What's wrong with him? He was fine yesterday. I'm not sure, honey. I'm sure he'll be fine, my mom said with a smile. The rest of the day dragged on. I watched a couple movies, read some books, put together a puzzle. When night came, my mom said she was going over to Tommy's house to see how his mom was doing. I jumped at the chance to see Tommy for myself. They told me Tommy was sleeping, so I had to stay and watch TV. Tommy's dad wasn't home. Tommy's mom said he went out and didn't come back yet. I overheard them talking in the kitchen. Tommy's mom sounded really upset. I don't know. They said it was some kind of necrosis. But it's everywhere, and it's spreading fast. They don't know what caused it or how to stop it. I didn't know what necrosis meant. Tommy's mom broke down crying while my mom shushed her and rubbed her arm. I took the opportunity to sneak off to Tommy's room. I turned the light on and went to his bed. He was fast asleep. Hey, bud. How you doing? He didn't answer. In the light, I could see his skin had turned red, blotchy in some places, bruised with purple. In some places, his skin looked black and flaky. I could only sit and stare at him. I didn't understand what was happening. He looked awful, like some weird zombie kid. I'd never seen someone so sick before. I didn't want to touch him, so I just sat there watching him sleep, trying to process everything. After a while, my mom came in quietly. She touched my shoulder and told me it was time to go. We turned the light off and shut Tommy's door, heading back towards the living room. Tommy's mom was asleep on the couch, so we just let ourselves out. Just before I went to bed, my mom came into my room. She said she wanted to talk about what I'd seen today. I'm only telling you this because I think you're old enough to understand what's happening. Tommy is very sick. They don't know what happened, what's causing it, or how to fix it. He may not get better. I know he's your best friend, so if you need to talk, I'm here for you. I love you, sweetie. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what I could say. I just nodded and my mom gave me a kiss and a hug, turned off my light. I tried to sleep, but all these thoughts swirled around in my head. The trees, the grass, the dirt, Tommy. I couldn't make sense of any of them. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep. When morning came, I went back to look at that field. A lawn service guy was there, different from the one we had seen just a couple days ago. They called me last minute. Said the last company screwed it up. It's the darndest thing. All the seed they put down, the sod they rolled out. Not a single piece took, even with all that rain yesterday, he told me. Grass was once again a wheat color, but now it looked rotted and diseased as well. A white, powdery fungus had now settled over whatever grass was there. Dang shovel's dead too, he continued, holding out a shovel to show me. Must have left this one behind, but the handle's all rotted and the blade's all corroded and rusted. Never seen a shovel get like this in just a couple of days. He tossed the shovel in the truck, muttering something about there being nothing he could do, that he wasn't a miracle worker. He drove off and left me sitting there on my bike contemplating everything that had happened the last few days. Something wasn't right. I pushed off and rode towards the center of town. Without Tommy to hang out with, I didn't know what to do. I could go down to the creek and see what was there. I could go to the library, at least that was air-conditioned. Nothing I could think of sounded appealing. I ended up riding through neighborhoods looking for kids to play with, but everyone was inside. The sky had grown a gray color, threatening to open up, so I headed home. As I was passing the lot, a car screeched to a stop at the curb. A light drizzle had started, but a man in a business suit emerged from the car, tore off his jacket, and slammed the door shut. He was muttering a stream of curses and swears. "Hey, mister, it's raining," I called out to him. Wet splotches were beginning to bloom on his dress shirt from the rain. "Take my advice, kid. If you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself," he shouted, pulling a shovel from the trunk.
I was supposed to build a golf course here, but they can't even handle a little dry grass.
He marched out to the half-sea of dead grass and started to dig. Bigger drops of rain were starting to fall faster. The man's shirt was soaked, and so was I, but something compelled me to stay and watch. Soon the entire field was drenched and the dirt that had been shoveled up was thick and wet. A gross smell had permeated the air, wet and musty and earthy. It smelled like rot. The man continued to dig furiously, trying to upend the sod as quickly as possible. Behind him, the dirt had started to bubble. That didn't seem right. Water pooled out and mud formed wherever dirt was exposed. I watched as mud started to move on its own and pile on itself. Thunder had started to rumble off in the distance. Soon there was a massive pile behind the man. It seemed to have a life of its own. Rotted roots and sticks stuck out at odd angles. Eventually the man looked up to see me still watching, and the look on my face must have caused him to turn around. He swiveled, but the pooled rainwater caused him to slip and he fell in the mud. The giant mud pile behind him pulled up, and in one swift movement, crashed over him. It dissipated just as quickly as it had reared up, but as the mud was absorbed back into the ground, I saw the man was gone. All that was left was the lingering smell of rot in the air. A chill ran up my spine. I was unsure of what I had witnessed, but I shivered. Whether from shock or from the rain, I wasn't sure. The rain had soaked me thoroughly. All I could do was stand there and shiver and look out across the lot. The next few days passed in a haze. I was still trying to process everything that had happened. I couldn't tell my parents. They would just tell me to stop watching so much TV. Tommy was still getting sicker. It felt like everything was spiraling out of control, and all I could do was sit back and watch. Tommy died. My mom came home from Tommy's house one morning and told me while I was eating my Fruit Loops. His skin had turned red and swollen. The rot had spread to his bones, and eventually they just fell apart and disintegrated. It was so bad the funeral would have to be closed casket. When she told me, I couldn't do anything except stare back at her. She asked if I was processing everything okay, but I didn't know how to answer. I just felt numb and mindless all the time now, like everything was building up behind a dam that was about to break. My mom spent a lot of time at their house with his mom. His dad spent a lot of time at our house with my dad. I heard him say he couldn't bear to be at home anymore. I could understand that. I couldn't even bear to look at any of the games Tommy and I used to play. On the day of Tommy's funeral, the local paper published a column about him. They said he was a bright, happy boy who had died from unusual circumstances. Next to that was an article about the lot. The guy who had bought it, who was planning on building a golf course, had failed to show up at some meetings to finalize the plans. The city had called off the deal because no one could get a hold of him. The column had stated the city was planning on making the lot preserved land. They would encourage people to build a community garden within the next year, but the land would be undeveloped. The city would be holding a fall-themed festival there in the coming months after school started. The last time I rode back there, the rot smell was gone. The entire lot had grown lush and green again, seemingly all on its own.